Shark in a shrimp tank, big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it swim, only it's the wind in the murky water, not a thought of giving in. I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank, big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Want to put it all together. This is big things, doing big things, chasing big dreams. Yeah, it's all real. This life's all that it seems. All the chicks scream, all the dudes yell. This is just what I do, and I do it well. With the flow fresher than the new shoe smell. Going through hell, well, homie, keep going. You know the saying, you can reap what you sow in. So I don't chase girls, I just chase dreams. Play the same game, but we ain't in the same league. Running a campaign, Roadie 2016. Like a phone to die, putting me in charge. I'm a general from the front, I'ma lead the charge. Like a federal, fell on my lap never. Going hard as ever.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another amazing episode here on the Shrimp Tank. This podcast is powered now by Celsius Beverage. And if this is your first time tuning in, you catch all these amazing episodes up on our website, shrimptankpodcast.com. And of course, click off our city, Boca Raton. Every week, we bring you the best and brightest entrepreneurs from South Florida, really find the do's and don'ts running a business. And I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Roland Kedwell. He has been gone from the studio for 4 months or so now, and it's his first time back. So, Roland, before we kick off on today's episode, tell the audience where have you been and what happened in Belgium.
Well, after I served my sentence of 8 years as department chair and director of the Adams Center, I got a sabbatical and ended up getting a Fulbright Scholar Award to go to Belgium at Hasselt University. And I spent September to December there and worked on some research in family business, which is an area that I kind of specialize in. I wrote one short book on dysfunction and deviance in family firms and another one on conflict. It was a case study book where I collected cases and edited the book. So I was over there, cloudy, cold, but a great experience, a great time at a city about an hour east of Brussels.
Nice. And what are you up to these days now? Now in the step down as director of the Adams Center for Entrepreneurship, chair of management programs here at FAU. So tell the audience, is it a full-time podcast gig now from here on out?
I'm enjoying my life, buddy.
Yeah?
I'll tell you that. No, I'm actually a professor, and I teach classes in entrepreneurship and work with the entrepreneurship programs and work with the Adams Center, as well as teaching a couple other classes. One is a PhD seminar in advanced management theory. And so I'm teaching and doing research as well, continuing in the area of family business, and also hoping to do a lot more outreach with family businesses here in South Florida, whether we can help them with a variety of things that we may know that we may help them and get them engaged and involved with FAU. So that's kind of where things are now.
Good timing because we have over 275 past guests that keep on asking me like, hey, what are we going to do? Are we going to do another podcast show? How could I collaborate more with FAU? And of course, Kevin, our other co-host, is so busy right now. So I think it's a perfect time with everything you just said that we could go backwards, do some group, podcasts, but also bring them back into the classroom setting and do more with family business because a lot of them do run family business.
Yes, we definitely do want to get more involved with the community, and the community has huge numbers of family businesses in it. It's a driver of the economy, all shapes and sizes, and pretty excited to kind of get back into that area. Yep.
Okay, well, let's get into our guests today. We are here with Rachel Docekal. I think I might have pronounced that somewhat right. Did I get it?
Docekal.
I was
good
close.
Guess,
I was close. She is the CEO of Hanley Foundation. So, Rachel, to kick things off, just tell us a little bit about your brand.
Sure. At Hanley, we like to say that we educate, we change minds, we save lives. We are the only organization nationally that has a full continuum that is looking at stopping addiction. So we start with the youngest kids, we teach prevention, and then we go through that full continuum, which includes treatment for substance use and process disorders. And we have people in our center that are in their 80s and 90s.
And you focus on all types of addiction, or is it mainly drug, alcohol abuse? What's addiction? Define addiction and then go from there.
Okay. So let me answer the first question first. typically we deal with substance use disorders, so drugs and alcohol. But what is addiction? So true addiction is when somebody cannot stop either consuming a substance or doing something like gambling. There's sex addiction, food addiction, things like that.
So something you just can't stop doing it.
You just can't stop, no matter what the consequences are to you or to your family. You just can't stop. And there are varying phases. There's use, there's overuse, misuse, abuse, and then addiction. So we do treat people with overuse and abuse, but true addiction is somebody who just continues to use that substance. Their brain is compelling them to use, and they just cannot say no.
What are your feelings about social media addiction today?
I think it's really interesting. And over the last couple of months, we've started to see the research come down. We work with kids. So we start working with the youngest kids, elementary, but primarily we work with youth in middle and high school. And we know that social media is an addiction. We know that it has had tremendous negative consequences on their mental health. In fact, Hanley Foundation has 8 mental health beds, and unfortunately, they are almost always full.
Can we hit the rewind button for a moment? Let's go back to after you graduated from school. What was your original journey like? What was your occupation then, and then how did you become an entrepreneur? Kind of give us 3-4 minutes of it. Of course, I know we could talk probably for 2 hours. How you got to the CEO where you are today.
Sure. My journey as an entrepreneur probably would have begun when I was getting my MBA. I went to the CAT school at the University of Pittsburgh, and everything that we focused on was those tenets that make a successful entrepreneur. We had to work in groups. We had to innovate. Every class necessitated a project that hadn't been done before. They reshaped the way we thought about everything from looking at numbers all the way to thinking about products and analyzing how people interacted with their communities and society. It was a fantastic program. And after that, I really had a shift in the way I viewed leadership, the way I viewed staffing, teams, all of those elements that come together to create a high performing team and therefore a very high performing organization.
Did you first start working for other brands, or were you an entrepreneur from day one?
When I was getting my MBA, I worked for the University of Pittsburgh. So I got to represent the brand. I worked with the chancellor directly. I was part of the advancement department, putting on special events in the chancellor's mansion. So I really got to be that brand ambassador. It was something that I loved. He was a tremendous leader and allowed us to run with whatever ideas that we had.
So what is your biggest takeaway for working with someone like that? Often we hear here on the Shrimp Tank, like people look back at that one mentor, or that one person that really pushed them and taught them so much. And sometimes it's a parent, of course, we hear that a lot. Mm-hmm. But what was that one thing he taught you that just made such an impact to your life?
Probably that there is more than one way to get to your goal. Yep. And that whatever path you choose, that journey is going to be rich and filled with learning experiences. If you lean into those learning experiences, not only are you going to get to your goal, but you're going to come out of it completely transformed.
I love that, because running a business myself, I always see people following different successful folks. I'm like, but that's good for them, but it's not always right for you. And there's no one right way. All right. There's people who go after, I'm a financial advisor, right? They go after ultra high net worth, but then there's people that go after middle class, right? And you look at the stats and they're both number one, number two, right? So it just shows there's no one right way, but sometimes people get mentored and coached, say, no, you gotta work with the ultra high net worth or this bracket, and that's the way to do it. And that's just not the case, right? We see, Amazon versus Walmart, right? Yes, they're merging with online technologies, of course, but they're both successful, in their own ways. Roland, what is your opinion on this topic when it just comes to, exactly what she was just sharing?
Yeah, well, Frederick Taylor in management said there's the one best way to do everything, and that was pretty much taken down over the years in research in terms of the situation presents you with different opportunities and also different relationships between what is the best way to get at the problem you're trying to solve. I wanted to ask you too, and following up with that a little bit, was as you go into business or your career or nonprofit sector, had you worked in business or had you mainly been in nonprofits through your career? And I'll follow up with that once you tell us.
Sure. I got my MBA young, so I was still in my 20s prior to that. Just University of Pittsburgh, and before that, undergrad. So,
So did you go into business or did you go into the nonprofit sector?
I left my MBA and decided that I wanted to do something completely new, completely different. This was the late 90s, so I was the 50th employee of an organization that helped other organizations innovate online.
Okay.
Late 90s, everybody was saying, uh-oh, I need a website, and that is what our consulting firm did.
Okay, so that helped, that innovation, the training you got in your MBA program helped with that. How has it helped with being the head of a nonprofit organization? How is innovation, the idea of trying to figure out what change works and what change doesn't work and how to be creative and turn it into a product or service, how does that work for you in the nonprofit sector?
Let me just back up 7 years. I spent from 2010 to 2014, that period of time, as the CEO of Hanley Foundation, and decided that I wanted to start a consulting firm.
Oh.
I looked around at other nonprofits, had many friends who were either working for them or running them, who would call me and say, can you come and do this for us? Or would you just serve on a committee and help us with that? And, to what you're saying, there were very few people who were, I don't know if it was willing, or had the courage, but there's a nonprofit mindset. And when I would come in, I would say, we're not going to follow that game plan. Let's think about this, or let's think about that. And let's put together whatever that plan is that works for your organization. And in 2015, I launched Lyra Group, which was my consulting firm. I built it up over the next 7 years. Hanley Foundation was a client of mine, and I was really successful. What I liked to say is, let's take what's present and make what's possible for this organization. What's your niche? Where's the clear air? How can we have differentiators and create something that nobody else is doing?
In doing that, did you try to stress to them generating revenue as opposed to applying for grants and seeking gifts and that sort of thing? Was that part of the focus?
It's interesting that you say that. Earned revenue is something that a lot of not-for-profits don't key into. They are looking at those contributed revenue numbers. And what they don't understand is there's so much upside with both, but there is certainly upside with earned revenue. And if you can lean into that, a lot of times you then have excess funds to build out those new projects and try new things, because your contributed revenue is not paying your bills.
Yes, you're relying on that. It will go away.
Yep. That's right.
it will go away. So
That's
yes,
right.
that's very important.
What was the number one struggle that they were all coming to you for? Right. Obviously, these nonprofits typically have money issues. We know that. But what was the number one thing that people kept knocking on your door for?
I think a lot of it dealt with revenue.
Yeah.
So it's what's that revenue model look like? And, how can we maximize that revenue model? How do we scale? And so many times they were competing not for profits, and the mindset of competing with others instead of partnering and doing
Collaborating.
something that is, collaborative, where everybody, including the audiences and the clients they serve, benefit, is just a foreign concept.
And what stages were they in? For example, were they, one person groups that you were helping, or more, 50 plus employees? Like, who was your target?
It was more 50 plus
Yep.
employees, but I walked into the organizations, some of which were on the edge of bankruptcy, and dealt with those, all the way to organizations that were doing pretty well and wanted to launch a capital campaign and build out some projects.
So they just weren't getting growth. They just kept doing the same thing over and over again, and it was just flatlined. And then they would bring you in and say, like, what are we doing wrong? Right.
That's
Like,
right.
and we see that a lot with all entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
right? It's a
Mhm.
consistent issue. It's like, okay, we got to 50 employees, 100 employees, but now it's like every time we try a new thing when it comes to marketing, it's just like it goes, one direction and then it comes right back.
That's
right.
right.
And
That's right.
it's hard. Everyone hires different business coaches, and lots of times they have to find someone that have really been in that position, which you have. So
That's
tell
funny.
us.
I built my
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
going in and cleaning up other consultants' work.
So it was successful, right?
It was.
And now you find yourself back as the CEO of the Hanley Foundation. So tell us about that. Tell us how you left to start your own business because you saw all these issues. You're helping them anyway, and might as well get paid for it, right?
Sure.
And then you came. No, didn't get.
Well, yes, get paid for it. Get paid for
But
it.
what happened with the consulting businesses? How does it fit back into where you are now?
Hanley was my client for 7 years. The board and the former CEO, who was really terrific, approached me together and asked if I would step back in. I will say I immediately said no, and it took a little bit, but eventually I said yes
To come back as the CEO.
to come back as this.
So are you still running the consulting business as well, or you had to
No.
shut that down?
No,
Okay.
no.
What do you miss the most about that?
Hmm. I love what I'm doing so much that's not something I've thought about.
Hmm.
I had a few people who worked for me. I brought them with me to
Mhm.
Hanley. So, for me, it is all about what I call my people.
Okay.
And my people are with me, so I'm lucky.
So the Hanley Foundation is 40 years old
Mhm.
this year, I believe. And how did it grow? It started, I believe it was a husband and wife, I think. Started.
Mhm. But they started the foundation
Okay.
and then looked to the community. So they made a gift, but they looked to the community to help them raise the dollars to build out the treatment center.
Okay. And
It was
tell us.
community based.
Okay. And tell us about it. Tell us what many facilities, or just tell us about the programs
Sure.
a bit more.
Sure. Hanley Foundation really is South Florida's nonprofit treatment center. It was for a brief period of time from 2014 until we just reacquired it in December, for profit. But we were able to work with an amazing family out in Texas, the Rowling family, to repurchase it and bring it back under the foundation. And the programs and the services that we have really are the continuum that I talked about earlier. So we start with the youngest kids and we teach prevention. Prevention is not what we thought about when we were younger. I mean, we thought about just say no. That doesn't work. Our prevention programs teach self-assurance and courage and good decision making and coping skills, and the ability when somebody says, try this drug, try this alcohol, for that young person to say no. 85% of kids aren't drinking, and when it comes to peer pressure, I'm part of that bigger group. Those coping skills, the resilience, is what we're trying to get across to these young people.
Mhm.
Then we teach professionals and paraprofessionals about addiction. Still today in medical school, brand new doctors have only received a limited number of hours teaching them about the disease of addiction and that co-occurring mental health component. That is so critically important. So we have conferences and symposiums that we put on at Hanley Center's campus, and we try to teach people how to spot addiction, how to spot mental illness, and then what to do. This is not a situation where, you have a staff member, for example, who has developed an addiction to alcohol, and the thing to do is get rid of them. The thing to do is get in there and get them quality treatment. And we help professionals understand how to do it. And then certainly there is our addiction treatment. So we have quite a few beds. We have about 120 beds on our main campus. 8 of those are mental health beds, and we work with women, we work with men, we work with older adults, we work with first responders, and we are getting ready to work with pregnant women, and then new moms and their babies.
And how long do people stay in the treatment center? Average?
The old standard was 30 days. I can't give you a clear answer because an 18-year-old who has an addiction to opiates is probably going to need 6 to 9 months, whereas say a 50-year-old female who started drinking because her child went off to college and she was depressed may only need 30 days. Average stay somewhere around 45 to 60 days.
And are these the result of interventions? Like when a family, do they contact you and say, hey, we need this, we have a problem here. Can you help us do an intervention and get them some help?
Sometimes we always see our phones ring right after a holiday. Uncle Joe comes to holiday dinner, and there's what we call a kaboom at dinner. Uncle Joe may be coming into treatment the next week, and he may admit himself. Sometimes we have family members who are resistant, and then we'll talk them through how to do a loving intervention.
Okay.
Yelling at your family member and saying things that are going to make them feel even more ashamed than they do, it doesn't work. It doesn't help.
So do you do programs in the schools? You go into different public schools, and when do you start? Kindergarten or first grade, or when do you actually start?
We are in 32 counties across the state of Florida. We are the largest provider of prevention education in the country. And we have a program called Alcohol Literacy Challenge that is our own program that is licensed across the U.S. It's a tremendous program. We do work with elementary age kids, but you would never know that it is drug or alcohol prevention. So we talk to these kids about character traits and things like courage and kindness and those resilience building character attributes. Once kids get into middle school, then we recognize these kids are smart. Let's get into it with them and let them discover for themselves some of the marketing tactics, for example. So Alcohol Literacy Challenge is a fun program where kids do things like take questionnaires where we ask them, how do you think alcohol makes you feel? And the kids will say things like, oh, really happy, and it will make you want to dance. And, then we go into the science behind it and really what alcohol does and what drugs do. So
And
very complex.
and how many people approximately go through all your programs that exist in a given year? That's a tough question.
That's
So many different programs.
That's a tough question. I mean, every year we work with more than 100,000 kids. We have support groups, grief support groups, and support groups for families that are dealing with addiction issues. We, as I said, we have about 120 beds, and that's a 24/7 facility. So it is tens of thousands.
And how many employees and volunteers does it take to put this all together?
Oh, golly. We have right now 450 employees. We have countless volunteers, countless.
You sell some of your products to others to deliver them. Is that right?
We do. We
Yeah.
license some of our
License.
our
Okay. So
prevention
to other
programming.
addiction
Mhm.
centers and that
Mhm.
sort of thing. Okay.
But mostly we just give stuff away. So the training that I was talking about earlier, we will put a nominal charge on that training, $25 or something. We learned a long time ago that if you offer a training and it's completely free, people won't value it. So they'll
Yes.
sign up and then not come. We want people to get trained and get those CEUs, but we want to make sure they are going to actually come and take it seriously.
And then that's a perfect point, because so often we see all these free ads all the time, free course for this, free course for that, and even events when they're free, right? And it's such an important part of entrepreneurship. The second you put a price on something, even at $5 to attend an event, all of a sudden, people walk away with a better experience because they care about it more. And me being an entrepreneur, I've seen the same thing. I run the Owl app. And when it was all free and pay as you go, no one cared. They fill out information on their profile and they didn't take it that serious. But the second we said to be an expert, it's $10 a month, then all of a sudden nothing else changed. And all of a sudden, like, they cared and more information got on their bio, and then they made more calls on the platform. So it's interesting. It's just like those little switches with entrepreneurship can create such a difference. And when you're looking at all these courses that have been purchased, then the intent is there. Everyone's doing it the correct way. So that's a very important part. We're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump into our new segment called What is Hot?
Join the fastest growing community of professionals on the internet with OWL. Access new networks and otherwise unreachable professional contacts through the one-on-one call feature on the app. Scroll through the list of available professionals and join them for a quick call to build rich connections, expand invaluable relationships, and to broaden your professional landscape without needing lofty referrals. OWL. We bring vetted pros to your doorstep 24/7 on demand. Join our community by signing up at owl.com today.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. As a reminder, you catch all these episodes live every week right around 1 p.m. at Shrimp Tank Boca on all our feeds live. And you could call Rachel one-on-one on the Owl app next week. When she becomes an expert, all you have to do is follow her. You will receive a notification or text message and have that opportunity to chat one-on-one. We're the only podcast where our guests then take us up on this opportunity to create a profile on the Owl app, and everyone in our audience can chat about what they heard on the podcast today. So, Rachel, on this segment of the show, it's called What is Hot? We're going to ask you a question, go into detail why you believe it is hot. So, what is the hottest way to be a leader today? Right, you have 450 people to manage. That is very difficult. Lots of times we see, people in your shoes just getting sick of it. It's like, oh, every weekday I get into work and I have another email, I have another text message, and it's really difficult to lead 450 plus employees plus all the people volunteering. So what is the hottest way you've learned to really control the environment to stay in a good mood?
The piece that for me is most important is giving every single staff member the ability and permission to fail.
So go into more details on that, because failure is of course, a daily thing that occurs. Lots of times, if you're in sales, you're going to have to call 100 people, and likely these days, because no one picks up phone calls, one will pick up and probably be nasty to you, right? And you have to keep going and going. Of course, when you're talking about creating revenue for a nonprofit, you're always asking for money, so you're going to get a lot of failure. So explain in more detail when it comes to failure.
So let's think about entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What do? They are out there, they are on the leading edge, they are trying everything, and they have lots of successes. That's what we hear about, the successes. What we don't hear about are the failures, the times they tripped, the times that they fell flat. And for us, what we know is that if you try 10 things or 100 things, a couple of times you're going to fail. If people are making good decisions, if they are evaluating opportunities, if they move forward with something that really has been well thought out and it fails, that's okay, because it means that 9 times or 99 times they're going to succeed. And what that does is it gives us an edge that nobody else has, because every single one of our 450 people are out there trying and striving and making a difference.
How do you communicate to them that it's okay to fail?
I say you have permission to fail.
Okay. That sounds good.
But it's trying new things. It doesn't mean failing by not showing up to work or not, or no showing client meetings on Zoom, right?
No.
You're talking about failure. You're talking about, saying, hey, we're going to try this new marketing campaign and hopefully it works, and you're going to put your heart into it, correct?
We're talking about leaning in, whatever that person's particular role is. So if that person is a member of our horticulture staff, I mean, we sit on 14 acres of botanical gardens. We have a tremendous horticulture staff. Every once in a while they make a big mistake, but they're out there trying. It doesn't matter if you're part of our dining catering staff. It doesn't matter if you're part of horticulture or if you are our chief clinical officer. We want that person leaning in, best of the best. In fact, we play with that Lexus tagline, the relentless pursuit of perfection, because when you have that relentless pursuit of perfection, and perfection is not attainable, it's never attainable, but what's fun is the relentless pursuit of it. And you can't be in relentless pursuit if you are afraid to fail periodically.
Okay, I like this. So let's dig in. Me and you, Roland. I want you to share in 2023 what were some of your failures. Then I'm going to go, and then Rachel is going to close us out with our failures.
How many
I think
failures?
it's important
Okay.
to talk to people about failures, and I had so many in 2023.
Did you?
So I'll talk about 5 or 6 of them.
I can't even. I have to go back and look and put some thought into it a little bit, I think, before I can identify.
There are no failures.
I'm sure they're
in
there.
Belgium.
I'm sure they're there, but I just have to think back and identify.
Well, I'll go, and then if you think of some, I'll let you go, and then Rachel will go last.
Okay.
So in my case, right, I did too many things, right? I run a startup called Owl, right? I'm a financial advisor. I have to be there for clients. It's very important. It's their money that I'm managing, as well as their insurances, and then also 2 podcasts. I created the Owl podcast in 2023, really for a marketing engine to bring in more people towards Owl, right? And then the shrimp tank, it was always going, we have a good thing going here. So one of the things that I had difficulty is just letting go of some of those responsibilities as a leader, right? As you grow, you have to give off different tasks, right? So, that's a hard thing when your baby is Owl, right? It's a mobile app. You have all these developers, and you're trying to weave in staff members that are juggling already a lot of different things, right? So that was number one, is just giving away things and just letting it go and not worrying about their failures, right? And then 2 is, the amount of money spent on marketing where things did not perform well, right? How many times did I do an event? People thought I was crazy last year. We set up our interactive podcast booth for Shrimp Tank or Owl. We did an event, me and Roland, at Boca Center. It was supposed to be at Meisner Center. That failed because Boca just made a mistake. They didn't realize we were not allowed to speak in public, and it was actually featuring the CEO of Celsius Beverage, 10 Twirl CEO, Erica's Plumbing, and a couple others. And it was like, oh my God, that was a failure. But then it led to success because then I got to run at Boca Center. And instead of just shutting it down, I was like, let's just keep going. So sometimes you could turn failures into successes by just going with the flow. And then I learned, wait, I could do this in the future now because of that failure. Right. So I just look at it as like, you just, and it goes back to the COVID days, like when we saw one of our clients turn her restaurant into a grocery store. It was
Oceans 234.
Oceans 234. Right. Instead of just shutting down, she said, oh, well, what could I do that's different? Start a grocery store out of her restaurant. So some of my failures just were like the amount of money spent on marketing. But guess what? It's like no one realized. Now they're looking at me like, oh, you're so successful from all the marketing you did. I was like, no. I'm like, there was like 10 failures and 2 successful things in there.
That's right.
To lead, and I'm still failing. Like I was at PodFest Expo last week, and I did a contest, and not enough people signed up, and I thought it was genius, but the results show that it didn't work. So it's like more money, just probably thousands of dollars lost. But again, then one day when the successes are there, everyone's like, oh, they got lucky, right? What's your opinion when people say they got lucky and not knowing the failures?
I think that luck very rarely shows up.
Luck resides at the intersection of preparation and opportunity, and all of your failures are the preparation for the opportunity that you'll take advantage of. I'm sure I'm stealing that from somebody, but I think that's the case. And by the way, Jason, I've realized I am too big to fail.
You and the banks.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I'm just too big. No, volume wise, but yeah, I can think of a few things, but probably they involve personnel issues that I can't talk about.
Okay.
Oh, golly. All right. So my turn?
Yeah, your turn, Rachel.
Hanley Foundation in 2022 closed on a building and a piece of land that we thought was going to become our headquarters. And we really leaned into working with the architects and coming up with something that was amazing. In fact, we were supported by the state of Florida legislature, who gave us some dollars for these future plans. In March of 2023, I jumped on a plane. I flew out to Texas and spoke to the CEO of the organization that owned Hanley Center here in West Palm Beach, and said, if you ever want to sell it, please call me first. Well, he called the next day. I think that pivot away from the property that we had purchased, the plans that we had made, certainly we pivoted towards something that I would say is bigger and better. But pivoting is hard for anybody. It's hard for a board of directors. It is hard for staff. It is certainly hard for professionals that we've been partnering with, and discarding plans that are so well written is difficult. I would say that's my number one.
Okay. Well, I'd like to ask you a question in terms of what is the hottest tip you can give us on time management?
The hottest tip on time management. I might say that this is one of my failures.
Me too. I can identify that.
Golly.
Sounds like you don't have an off button.
I don't. I started this morning on the phone with my COO at 5:30, and I will not finish tonight until probably 8 or 9. So I'm not sure that my time management skills are well honed.
So the biggest tip would be to take some kind of a class in time management.
Yes, that's right. That's
But
right.
are you very scheduled out?
I
Like
am.
most days, is it like you put certain meetings in the beginning of the day versus on the back end of the day?
Yeah.
Do
This
you
point,
keep meetings to 30 minutes to an hour? Kind of get a little bit more detailed for us, because I think so often, people become entrepreneurs and then they reel it back in and they realize, wait, like I can't just scatter my schedule, everywhere. And I'm like that. I'm so scheduled out. I use CRM. Everything's got a position. If I share clients my schedule, it's like they only get certain times on purpose because I have to be on during those meetings. If it's a meeting on Zoom with a big group, I have to be careful when I put that, because I don't want to be tired. I have a lag in my day from 3 to 5.
sure.
When I get tired, and then I stumble upon my words sometimes, but in the morning I am on. So tell us more details on your schedule.
I like to say that I turn into a pumpkin after an hour. So I do not have any meetings that are more than an hour.
Yes.
It is just a time waster.
Yes.
I am scheduled really back to back to back to back. And that afternoon lag, I really understand that. Um, for me, the most important thing that I do is we have what's called an executive cabinet at Hanley Foundation. We meet once every couple of weeks. That is a long meeting. And I think that when I look at my schedule, what I would say is I'm on time. I keep to that time, and my phone is off and away from me. So is my email during that. I want to make sure that whether or not I'm talking to a member of the team in the hallway or I'm sitting in front of folks in a meeting, I want to make sure that I'm focusing on them. I'm listening. Sometimes that's all I need to fill my gas tank up. I was on my way to Hanley today. I walked in and had an opportunity to just say hello and chat with a member of our family program staff. And it filled my gas tank up. I mean, the work that they're doing is extraordinary.
You keep saying fill my gas tank up, and I always watch TikToks on this with just energy. So kind of what do you mean by fill your gas tank up?
I think that all of us who are in a leadership position have things that draw from our gas tank, and we have things that fill it back up. And for me, filling my gas tank up are things that bring me joy. And having the opportunity to talk to and appreciate the work of my team and then say thank you to them, I would do that all day. I mean, I just love it. And if I'm lucky, they will trust me enough to share with me something that they want or they need or they're hoping for, or a great idea, that maybe they haven't had the courage to move forward with. And, there's nothing better. Nothing better.
So what is the hottest program you're running?
Oh,
Which
God.
doesn't make it good, but that's hot. But what's hot in this area?
It's your
Sure.
heart.
I would say that we excuse me. There may be two programs that I would focus on, maybe three. The first one would be addiction treatment for older adults. So many times these older adults come in, they're in wheelchairs, their families think that they have dementia, they can't walk. They'll sit in a lump for a while, and then around week 5, their brains clear. We have them start to work with our physical therapists, and typically by the end of their stay, they walk out, and they walk out with their loved ones. I can't even begin to describe how fulfilling that is. I mean, it's extraordinary, giving a family their loved one back and, conceivably 10 or 20 more years.
And that's that program is growing for you too.
Hanley Foundation started older adult treatment. It was the first organization to do it. It is the best organization. And we work with obviously the client, but we work with the family, and that would be my number 2, the family program. We have a family program where we bring the family in, we educate them on addiction, then we bring the family and the client together, and we work through some of those issues, some of it very, very painful, that led to divisions in the family. And many times we are able to heal families. If it doesn't work, the first time, if that gap is not bridged, then we might do it again a couple weeks later. But truly, we're not just saving the life of the client, we're saving the life of the family as well. And then my third one would be our 8 mental health beds. They are full all the time, unfortunately. And, we're going to raise some dollars, hopefully, to build out double or triple the beds that we have now. I wish this was not such a need in our community, but it is such a need in our community.
Okay. My final question for this segment is all about the money, right? So all this is amazing, but you talked about it earlier that you would teach other nonprofits how to bring in the money, right? So tell us, what are the hottest ways for nonprofits to just bring in revenue, right? A lot of times that's why they all go out of business, right? They can't figure it out. They go right to, we had the CEO Grant Watch on, and they go right to the Grant Watch, website. They apply for grants. They just can't get them. They hire a grant writer. They can't get them. And then of course, when the economy is not doing well, grants, are a lot harder to get, right? And donations are harder to get, right? So tell us, what are, the number one way, number two way right now that's hot, would you say, for nonprofits?
I'd say two things. Randall and I were talking about this at right before this segment. The first is contributed revenue. It is really easy to say, let's chase this grant or that grant. Everybody else is chasing that. So look at your contributed revenue. And along with that contributed revenue, where are there areas that you as an organization can innovate? If you are one of 100 and you're chasing grant revenues for the same old thing, and there are only 10 grants, only 10% of you are going to get that revenue. If you are innovating and doing something nobody else is doing, taking it to the next level, applying research, it's clear air, and people are going to want to fund that project.
Can you be a little bit more specific, right?
Sure.
Because I think it's so important. I have so many nonprofits that reach out to me, say, Jason, you've had a lot of people on the Shrimp Tank. Can you help introduce me to this individual, or what do you think about marketing this side of my business? So like, what do you mean by, is it selling, Celsius in front of their store, right? Is it opening up a coffee, stand at their location? And we've seen a lot of that works. Like Coffee Works, one of our past guests, they do phenomenal. And then it's like they have a Starbucks, at their facility. And obviously I'm very entrepreneurial. I'd be like, you could have a podcast studio at your office and create a show. And then the donors come in because they're going on your show. And then it opens up a relationship, right? Because everything in business is about relationships. And then you could even, sell them packages because they're your brand's back there, but no one's doing that, right? So I'm just thinking there's so many innovative ways to create revenue, but what are the successful ways you've really seen?
I think it is that process of digging in and looking at the needs. So we talked about coffee. One of the things that we really need in addiction treatment is we need a long runway. So we need folks who are done with treatment to have opportunities at job training, and then the ability to be launched into a career. So let's go back to coffee. The legislature gave us $3 million to build out a recovery bookstore and coffee shop. And what it is a recovery bookstore and coffee shop that is really masquerading as a job training program. So what we're doing is we're using the opportunities in the bookstore and the coffee shop to give these folks employability skills, to give them job training, to give them that confidence, interviewing skills, all of those different components. This is something nobody else is doing in addiction treatment. So look for that clear air.
I love it. Absolutely. We're going to take a quick commercial break here from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump to our Plead the Fifth segment of the show.
Step into our state-of-the-art innovation lab and create your digital future. Oz uses cutting-edge technology and 22 years of industry knowledge to enhance customer experience through digital innovation in a variety of expertise. Oz is a leading global consulting company whose services and solutions are trusted by startup, midsize, and even Fortune 500 companies. Get to know more about Oz's Salus, a mobile solution bringing us back to max capacity, and their latest solution, Rainmaker, saving insurance companies years of work. To learn more about Oz and their exciting technologies, visit followoz.com. That's FOLLOWOZ.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. As a reminder, catch all these amazing episodes up on our website, shrimptankpodcast.com. So, Rachel, on this segment of the show, it is called Plead the Fifth.
Okay.
We're going to ask you a question you do not want to answer. You could just say the words, I plead the fifth. But you can't plead the fifth 2 times. Otherwise, when you open the coffee shop, Roland gets 10 free vouchers for coffee. Okay, that's
Oh,
the deal.
shucks.
So be careful pleading the fifth 2 times. That's the deal. So
What about you?
I don't know. I'm not. I'll get.
No, I always
fine.
get something
It's
from
always
this.
wrong.
It's always me.
It's always wrong. I'm
Okay.
a nice guy. I give
Okay.
things away.
Okay.
Let's talk about, in general, the biggest PR nightmare you've ever experienced, right? Often people mean well when it comes to marketing, right? And then you have to hire a PR company to fix the day. And we see that with Bud Light right now, right?
Mhm.
They are
Oh,
trying to
boy.
fix the problem that occurred and they are failing, right? Nothing is working, right? It's a PR nightmare. One of the most iconic brands in our history in the beverage world, right? So what was your biggest PR nightmare that you had dealt with so far in your career?
Does it have to be an actual nightmare or could it be an averted nightmare?
It could have been, yeah.
Okay.
Either or.
I lived in Pittsburgh, as I shared. That's where I went to undergrad and graduate. I was volunteering for the Pittsburgh Public Theater, and they were putting together a brochure, and for whatever reason, the proofreader had not done a good job. So public theater, public, somehow dropped the L in many, many
Oh.
places in their brochure. The good news is that before it was printed and distributed, it was caught and fixed.
You
And
might have had a whole different clientele coming to that if it didn't gotten fixed.
that is exactly right. That's right. So, but I will say I was just a volunteer, and I was not a volunteer proofreader. So let me just be
So you didn't
clear.
catch that. You just
Uh,
were you the one who caught it?
I was the one who
Ah,
caught
okay.
it. Yes, even though, but I wasn't the proofreader. So,
Well, now proofreading, for every entrepreneur listening, is like just throw everything to ChatGPT and say, can you grammar check this? And it's
That's exactly
amazing.
right.
Not enough entrepreneurs and other professionals are just utilizing it just for that, right? Obviously, we don't want it to write everything for you, right? Everything, like, we know now as entrepreneurs, like, I get stuff back and I'm like, you did not write this. I'm like, I could tell the lingo. This is straight ChatGPT, but for grammar, absolutely amazing tip
yes,
to utilize that, because it catches things like that, just one letter off.
it does.
And you could do like 200 pages. You're like,
Mhm.
here's a book, proofread this and spot where, because you got to give the right prompts. And I've been amazed because I do a lot with Owl App, and there's so much automation, and our developers are good at developing, not at grammar. So then I'm like, oh, looking back at 3 years of developing Owl, I'm like, how many times something has gone live with emails or notifications or texting, and it's been wrong with like a period or a missing letter. I'm like, how did that get by 8 people?
Yep.
Right. It's just like no one's looking for it. But with ChatGPT now, it's like, it's been amazing.
Right.
I throw everything in there. Even when I'm like, I don't know, it looks good. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't. I do. And it does catch something. So,
I love that.
yeah.
So you haven't had any PR nightmares as head of the Hanley Foundation.
I would like to just answer knock on wood to that one.
You mean you haven't had any yet? Knock
Well,
on wood.
Well, knock on wood.
Or you're going to
knock
plead
on
the
wood.
fifth and not tell us about one?
No, I'm not going to plead the fifth.
All
There's
right.
no fifth pleading.
All right. Well, I'll give you $100 if you can guess what my addiction is. No, okay. But for my addiction, I understand I can get a scholarship.
You can.
Now,
You
tell me about that. How do I get a scholarship to come to the Hanley Center?
The Hanley Foundation has something called Lifesaver Scholarships, and we use them in a couple of different ways. First is need-based scholarships for individuals who don't have any insurance at all. Hanley takes out of network insurance. Many times that out of network insurance has a very large deductible or patient responsibility that goes along with it, and people can apply for a scholarship to help offset those costs. I mean, those costs sometimes can be upwards of $15,000 or $20,000.
How much are the scholarships?
In that case, they'd be $15,000 or $20,000.
So it's like a full ride scholarship to go through the program.
Well, insurance is helping out.
Okay.
And then we scholarship people in other areas of the country who don't have the ability to come here. So, for example, there is an amazing youth program for young men in California. we've scholarship people there. We scholarship people all over the country and try to just help people get the services they need.
So you've had a situation where you talk to your employees and you tell them it's okay to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And at some stage, somebody's going to fail so much that you're going to have to fire them, let them go. Tell us about the biggest nightmare you've had having to fire one of your employees.
I think what I would say is that many times when you have a relationship with somebody, you really, really like them and they're not able to do their job, it can be difficult. I mean, I had somebody who I was tremendously fond of, who was working remotely, but really wasn't working for months and months and months and months. And that was difficult to release that person. And you know, I would like to say that firing people is something that's few and far between because we do a really good job hiring people. But it's always challenging to let people go.
But that was your biggest nightmare, was this person you liked, you were fond of. And when that happens, that's always the biggest issue, is that you have somewhat of a personal feeling for them and they're not doing their job. So
I certainly every organization has challenges with hiring and firing people. For me, it's having to let people go who I'm fond of.
Okay. Tell us your biggest financial loss when it came to something you did for marketing, right? Marketing tends to have high losses next to it because you try things that you hope are successful, but then they become failures, right? And trying to increase revenue all the time, you have no choice but to try new marketing things. So looking back at your career, tell our audience, how much did you lose? Give us in a ballpark. Like, was it $1 million, $3 million
Sure.
for the company?
So I'm going to give two because I know you want me to answer your question, but my biggest loss was one of my clients recruited me away from that consulting company where I was the 50th employee. About a year and a half after I was recruited away, that company was acquired by Microsoft.
Oh.
So
stock options.
That was a painful, painful day because I had to surrender those stock options when I left.
And how much ballpark were they worth after they got acquired?
Millions.
And you were young, right?
I was so very, very young. I was 30.
Yeah,
so
30. That's a big like, really?
That's right. That's right.
Most
and then
people are
you
making
think
50,000 to 200,000. I'm assuming in that range, and then all of a sudden, like millions.
Right.
To make all in one shot is so difficult.
That's right. To answer your question, though, a marketing loss. For me, marketing losses only ever came when I didn't look to the data. So when I hear a marketing person or anybody say, "Oh, my gut says da 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 da," I think to myself, well, this isn't going to end well. It's going to end pretty badly because your gut, my gut is, a 54-year-old female. If I am marketing to 54-year-old females, I may be correct, but my gut is not going to be correct otherwise. So, what I've learned is it's important to look at the data and do what your audiences are telling you that they want, not what you think is right.
Audience.
Well, I guess we can't ask you how old you are. You won't plead the fifth on that one.
I won't, Randall. I knew it was coming, and I wanted to get through this without giving you any.
Well, I'm just getting back into the swing of things, so I'm not going to do any hitting below the belt here. I'll just ask you this. How big is the Hanley Foundation? What is your budget? How big is your budget?
We're just shy of $50 million a year.
$50 million a year. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, big organization. Saving a lot of lives. That's what we do. That's what we want to count is, I want to get to 50 million lives saved.
Oh, I did have one more, though.
There he goes. See, Rachel?
You mentioned, I just don't understand. You mentioned horticulture.
Sure.
What are you growing over there?
Native plants.
For what?
We have for peace, for serenity, The treatment center sits on 14 acres of botanical gardens.
Oh.
We have walking paths. I mean, it is
For calmness and serenity.
serenity and,
Ah.
helping people get in touch with where they are and
Mhm.
heal. I mean, it is very, very healing. In fact, we just put out a new magazine called Recovery Revolution. And in here, we have some photos of our campus
Mm.
that I will share with you.
This is in West Palm Beach.
This is in West Palm Beach.
Ah,
So
nice.
nobody ever gets to see it because it's a medical
You have
campus.
to check in to get.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So
I might be seeing you. Who knows?
yeah,
I'll plead the fifth on the rest of that.
Adam, I brought you a magazine.
That's nice.
Well, Rachel, you got through Roland's questions on Plead the Fifth. No one usually does. So
I'm just being nice today.
he's in a nice mood. He wants to come back on the show more frequently in the future. So he's
From Belgium?
yes.
No, I'm here. I'm back.
Well,
You're back?
I'm back.
Okay.
yeah, he was away for 4 or 5 months. So he's back now. Well, Rachel, thank you for joining us on the Shrimp Tank today. For our audience listening, how could they get in touch with you guys?
HanleyFoundation.org is probably the easiest way. All of our contact information is on there. And of course, the OWL app. I'll be on it next week.
Absolutely. Everyone listening, you heard it from her. You could chat with her one-on-one on the OWL app, and we will be back next week right around 1 p.m. live at Shrimp Tank Boca. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the